Network. Larry Klayman, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
You're welcome. My pleasure, as usual, my good friend.
Let's talk about this nationwide injunction that the Supreme Court stopped these judges, these individual judges in their little districts, from doing nationwide injunctions to stop the president's agenda. That stopped, but they still have some lawfare powers in them. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, let's explain what Justice Amy Coney Barrett did when she issued her ruling for the majority, for 6 of the justices on the court. Of course, predictably, you had 3 of the leftists who didn't agree. What the decision says and what it stands for is that a ruling in one district of this country, say it's the Northern District of California where the left likes to go because it's very leftist, will only have applicability in that district or in that circuit if it's then going up on appeal and is affirmed on appeal, and only with regard to the parties involved. It doesn't extend beyond that. However, here's the catch-22, which no one has explained. There's been a lot of euphoria. Everybody thinks, according to what the government is saying, that everything's solved. It's not, because those decisions are still followed by judges in other districts as precedent. Now, a appellate court, when it makes a ruling, that's precedent. A lower court, it's more like guidance, okay, that judges can look at. But it still will have effect throughout the country. So it doesn't solve everything. However, there is also a loophole, and that is that if you bring a class action, which goes beyond just the parties that are in the case and will extend to other states, then it can have a nationwide application, and Judge Coney Barrett recognized that as well. But they made a correct decision. It's a very good decision. It's a start, but it's not a be-all and end-all, and there's so much more wrong about our legal profession that we still have to take it apart and put it back together in the way envisioned by our founding fathers. For instance, I think we need a case that puts in front of the Supreme Court their reconsideration of an earlier case many decades ago that gave themselves immunity and gave the lower court federal judges immunity. They should not have immunity. It's not in the Constitution. They took that from ancient England because King George III gave immunity to his own judges so they could rubber stamp his illegal edicts. Well, we're not ancient England. And although the Constitution makes a brief reference to common law, this court has the ability, the Supreme Court, to reject that. But of course they won't, because they want immunity for themselves and they want immunity for the lower court judges. But if judges knew that they were not immune from their decision making, then maybe they would be more honest. In fact, for sure, they would be more honest. So that's what we're talking about with this new Department of Judicial and Legal Accountability that we've created at Freedom Watch. We're going to have a formal announcement very soon. We've been working on that behind the scenes. We have some very prominent people, like Representative Nancy Mace that's on that, Alan Keyes, former UN ambassador, Bob Barr, former U.S. attorney from Georgia, a representative from the Northern District of Georgia, who I collaborated with in impeaching Bill Clinton. So we've got some really prominent people there, and we're going to have to overhaul this legal system. So I don't want people to go to sleep and think that everything's solved. It's not. There's a lot of kumbaya in Washington these days. We can understand that the president is doing an excellent job. He's a salesman. I'm a salesman when I'm in court in front of a judge and a jury. But it really doesn't go as far as being sold to the American people.
Well, you do have, I think, a class action suit coming out in one case, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to gain that, nationwide injunction type status, but they're going to do it under the banner of a class action lawsuit, correct?
That's right. You'll see more and more class actions. Now, the only advantage to a class action from the defense standpoint is that it takes a while to get a class action certified. You don't file a case and all of a sudden you're a class action. A judge has to make that ruling. And in the interim, lawyers, may have a difficult time proving that they don't have a conflict of interest in that class action, or that they can represent members of the class if it's too great. But it can be crafted in a way to get around those hurdles, and that's something the left will surely seek to use. Now, the other interesting thing about the Supreme Court ruling, where Coney Barrett severely criticized the judge, Ketanji Jackson, and it was warranted. She is a DEI judge. She should never be on the bench at all. It's not racist to say it because Joe Biden himself advertised, I'm going to pick a black woman justice for the Supreme Court. Well, there were others in this country that were qualified. Apparently they weren't given to him. And maybe, as we're going to talk about with his auto pen, this is what they wanted. They wanted a radical leftist. But she's not just a leftist. She's a stupid leftist. And Coney Barrett made a monkey out of her. No, I don't mean that in any racial sense. I just happen to use that word in this because what she said was so nonsensical as to carry no weight. And what Coney Barrett said, in effect, was, look, you want an imperial judiciary, but you have problems with an imperial executive branch of the president, and he stayed within his lane in most of these cases. She doesn't get to the issue of birthright citizenship yet. The Supreme Court's deferring on that, but she humiliated Ketanji Jackson. I've been in front of Ketanji Jackson in the beginning when she first became a district court judge. I knew she was an idiot. Okay, it was a simple Freedom of Information Act case. And she said to me, Mr. Klayman, I really don't know much about the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, what could be more basic than that?
Wow.
And, and from that point forward, she then got elevated from the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, where she sat. And, of course, they plucked her out of that because that's a feeding ground for the U.S. Supreme Court. Why it is, I don't know, because that court has a lot of issues. It's very leftist generally. Trump's put a few conservatives on that court, but not really. Recently, Greg, he criticized the Federalist Society for giving him names of judges that were rhinos, that aren't even standing up for him, or conservative principles. So this is the problem that we have in our legal system, and the decision with regard to birthright citizenship and nationwide injunctions is good. It's a good start, but we have to do a whole lot more.
How do you think they're going to rule on that birthright citizenship deal?
I think they'll chicken out. I think they'll rule probably against Trump on that, and it will have to go to a constitutional amendment, which is very difficult to pull off. I think the president has a valid argument. I think it's a good argument, under the Fifth Amendment and 14th Amendment, is that, you need due process for these things, and there isn't due process to rubber stamp someone as a citizen simply because their mother and father may come here on a vacation and give birth. That is not a basis. It's created a mill for becoming a U.S. citizen under contrived circumstances. And I don't think that our founding fathers intended that. Now, it is interesting, this decision by Coney Barrett goes back, as many of the justices have, and looks at the law at the time that our Constitution was enacted. And if you look at the basis for that today in terms of birthright citizenship, it was basically to allow slaves, the sons and daughters of slaves, to become citizens. It was really for that purpose. It wasn't for this purpose that if you live in Nicaragua or whatever, you take a vacation to the United States and you give birth to your kid and your kid becomes a citizen. It doesn't make any sense at all. So Trump has the stronger argument. I just wonder whether the Supreme Court has the guts to affirm his executive order.
Okay, well, here's another one for you, and this is really something. Donald Trump is adamant he won the 2020 election, and Jerome Corsi says, yeah, he did. And the way they did it was they wasn't the voting machines so much. It was the corruption in the voter rolls. But here we have, dirty FBI director, or dirty FBI blocked investigation into 2020 Chinese mail-in voting scam. He blocked, the Chinese were printing ballots to make sure Trump didn't get elected, and this moron, this insanity administration got in for Biden in a voting scam to protect Chris Wray, who likely lied to Congress. This is outrageous. This is firing squad stuff. He knew that the Chinese were printing ballots and they were interrupting our life. The Chinese, the CCP, and he let it go. He needs to be in front of a firing squad. This is treason. Does he not? I mean, this is a big deal, right?
Yeah, he was an absolute disgrace. I mean, he was a chameleon. He was like Woody Allen's movie Zelig. Whatever president was in power, he would kiss their derriere because he's a bureaucrat and he wanted to just go along to get along. But he was also corrupt. And Trump was right to get rid of him. But this is typical of what the FBI has become. And there still is a deep state within the FBI. And I'm sure that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are coming up upon that repeatedly. And I think they're good men, and I don't mean to in any way insult their intelligence or their integrity, but I watched an interview several weeks back where they were being asked about the Epstein files.
Yes.
Why weren't they fully released? And they looked like deers in the headlights. Clearly, something's being covered up at the FBI about Epstein. There's no way that he committed suicide. And in all likelihood, the reason it's being covered up is because he may have been, and likely was, a CIA agent or some other intelligence operative, and he was using, Fantasy Island, so to speak, and all of these young girls,
child rape,
trafficking, to set people up, to blackmail them. That's something that the FBI and the CIA are very good at, I might add. So there's no explanation today, much like there isn't for anything else that's happened in this country, whether it's the assassination of the attempted assassination of President Trump, whether it's the assassination of Martin Luther King, who the family doesn't believe James Earl Ray did it, whether it's the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy, current head of the Department of Health and Human Services, doesn't believe that Sirhan Sirhan did it. John F. Kennedy, it's most likely the CIA had him killed. This is what has going on in our country, and I'm afraid that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino may fear for their own lives at this point. So they look like they were really nervous when they were called on the carpet in an interview as to why we don't have information about Epstein's death. What was released was absolutely worthless.
Well, something that's not worthless, my sponsor, this right here, ivermectin, mebendazole, ivermectin, it's 24 milligrams of ivermectin and 250 milligrams of mebendazole, which is the human version of fenbendazole, and it is for a parasite cleanse. According to Dr. Peter McCullough, who's been on this program, he says 60 million people in America have parasites. You can also get it from fish, but there's more uses for this compounded drug. Dr. Peter McCullough was also talking about how off-label use of this for cancer. Dr. Elizabeth Eads, talking about how she uses these kind of drugs for people who are vax injured from the CV-19 vax injury. Dr. Pierre Corey also uses some of these drugs, same thing. It's the ivermectin, mebendazole, compounded formula. It's $5.99, but don't let that scare you off. With USA Watchdog, the code, you get 15% off. That knocks it down to around $500 and free shipping. It's a fantastic product. There are 90 pills. It's a pretty stout dose, 24 milligrams of ivermectin and 250 milligrams of mebendazole. It's USA Watchdog is a promo code, 15% off and free shipping. Now back to you, Larry Klayman. I want to talk about the money. And the left is being cut off. You hear more and more stories and more comments about how the Democrat Party is running out of money. And one of the ways they're running out of money, and I think they funded, these NGOs for these people to come into the country. That's how they got millions to come in. They were giving them free money. They were funding it, and one of the agencies that was funding it is USAID. And CNN is hyperventilating after Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, officially shuts down USAID. And then we find out that USAID was involved in funding a color revolution in 2014 in Ukraine. Look what we got. It also did all kinds of other funding, like for these migrants, and all kinds of other crazy funding that they're using. They're supposed to be buying food and providing people with clean water. That's what they were doing with USAID. Rubio shut it down. My question to you is, as they are losing their avenues of legal lawfare, for example, this nationwide injunction scam has been tamped down quite a bit, and they're losing their money in terms of things like USAID funding their NGOs or non-governmental agencies. What does that do? What are they left with?
Violence, that's what they're left with. And we see it happening, and we see calls to violence repeatedly, including this mayor-to-be in New York City, which advocates violence against Christians and Jews, a worldwide intifada. financed probably by George Soros and others. And that's why we at Freedom Watch are doing what we're doing to fight back with citizens' grand juries, citizens' trials, to hold these people accountable, finding ways to sue them. And we need your support at freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org to do that. It's very expensive. So we have to take them out legally, and we need to push back. Now, coupled with that, our bar associations in D.C., District of Columbia, and New York, they're trying to eliminate conservative lawyers. So we're fighting against that, too. They don't want us to be able to fight back in court. But they're Bolsheviks. That's what they are. We said that in the last show, Greg. They want us dead. They don't want us alive. They want us dead. And consequently, we have to be prepared also to defend ourselves. We have to defend our gun rights because they want to take the guns away from us. We want to use them in self-defense, not offensively. But yes, it's coming. And with each day that you see a Trump success, not only is he more at risk, and we need to protect him too, because they're God willing, and we pray that nothing will happen. But probably those 2 assassination attempts are not the last from the left. And I fear also for his cabinet, for who's with him. But he's riding high in April. We don't want to see him shot down in May, in the words of Frank Sinatra. And that's why we're working as hard as we can at freedomwatchusa.org.
So wait. There are so many cases that they have opened, just like this FBI thing, this FBI that I was just talking about, how they blocked the investigation into 2020 Chinese mail-in voting, and they were printing ballots so Biden would win. So this is treason. This is firing squad stuff. Am I wrong?
Well, look, they're the ones that triggered the Russian collusion investigation. This character by the name of Kevin Kleinsmith falsified an affidavit which gave rise to the Steele dossier in large part, which triggered the Russian collusion witch hunt. He was an FBI lawyer. This comes as no surprise. You have others there. You had Baker. You had Strzok. I mean, it was a corrupt enterprise, and they were working under Comey at the time, but the culture of the FBI continued on. It's still corrupt, the FBI, and this is what Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are up against, and it's why, frankly, I think they fear for their own lives over there.
Wow.
Because there is a deep state, and it's backed up by the CIA, it's backed up by others, in the dark recesses of our government, particularly in Washington, D.C. and around the country. And it works against the American people. As I said earlier, we have no information about anybody who's been assassinated in this country in my lifetime, let alone before that. We have no information about what's going on, currently. It's reliable in world affairs. We don't know. We don't get the information.
But is Chris Wray in trouble over this? I mean, this is treason.
Yes.
He didn't investigate now we know it was a real story. It really did happen. They were printing ballots. They say hundreds of thousands. I think it's going to be in the millions. He is in trouble. Am I wrong?
Yeah, of course he's in trouble, but will anything happen? That's why you need a Freedom Watch. That's why you need us to bring citizens' grand juries and citizens' trials. He needs to be indicted. He needs to be tried. The people need to hold him accountable. The establishment won't. The establishment is afraid because they know that the FBI has files on virtually everyone. Used to be physical files during the Clinton administration. I brought a case against the FBI, Alexander versus FBI, when Hillary Clinton got 900 files on people she wanted to destroy. Now it's computer generated, and people are afraid of that. They're afraid of the CIA. They're afraid of the National Security Agency. They only go so far. It becomes a dog and pony show on Fox News. Well, we're not interested in dog and pony shows at Freedom Watch. We bring cases, hard-hitting cases. We bring criminal prosecutions in the people's name. And that's why we need your support at freedomwatchusa.org.
Well, you have a case right now in Florida, and I wanted to get to this, too, because it has to do with your case. You have a case in Florida saying, hey, they knew that basically your case is, they knew that Joe Biden was incompetent. And this AutoPen thing, the new crucial details in the AutoPen testimony, this Neera Tanda testified that she was authorized, and I say, by who? And the Senator Eric Smith says he's going to get all the files and find out, what can get to the bottom of this. Also, you have allegations that even the AutoPen signature was a forgery. What happens if we find out, A, that the President Biden didn't know what he was doing, or B, that President Biden's signature was a fraud, a forgery? I mean, couldn't Ketanji Brown Jackson be taken off the bench?
It's possible, but this is what we're up against. And this is why we were way ahead of the curve here, Greg. We brought a case in Florida courts. I brought it as a Florida voter and citizen. Florida election laws are very strong. I used them back in 2020 with 2000 with George W. Bush and Gore. We have the right to bring a case as a voter for fraud. I brought a case against Joe Biden, against Jill Biden, his lovely wife, who facilitated this. She's a criminal. Against the White House doctor, Kevin O'Connor, and Kamala Harris, who all colluded, conspired to keep from the American people that they were trying to get elected a brain-dead, moron, criminal as president of the United States. And this is what we got. And he came within a whisper of destroying the entire country. Thank God President Trump was elected, and that, you know, groups like Freedom Watch are out there fighting every single day. But they covered it up. So the case was filed in Florida. We're pushing the judge to get the thing moving. I put the other side on notice that I wanted to depose Joe Biden. I wanted to depose Jill Biden. I wanted to depose the doctor. So it's not just Congress that's going after this. We're going after this. And of course, we know that when Congress does it, it's mostly to get their face on Fox News and to get reelected and to raise campaign contributions. We're in it for real. We want these people held accountable. So consequently, I hope people will support that at freedomwatchusa.org, because it's basically your last line of real defense. What Congress does is for show. It's not for dough. We also have a case in Texas where a judge is sitting on our complaint against the Chinese Wuhan lab that killed all these people. And we got to push on that as well. We served the Wuhan lab and we served communist China. They didn't respond. The judge should be entering the default. He's scared of China. China threatened us with retaliation, and he's apparently frightened. Well, you know, you're not frightened, Greg. I'm not frightened. We have to do what we need to do as American citizens to save our country, and we need to be there for President Trump. We're his hamburger helper. We're there to ensure that we're victorious and make America great again in the next 3.5 years.
It just sounds to me, money's being cut off, avenues are being shut down for legal stuff. You have cases in Texas and Florida, this whole auto pen thing. If this auto pen thing breaks open, if for example, Senator Eric Schmidt breaks this thing wide open, and just about everything Biden did, and Ron Klain was chief of staff for 3 years, and he wrote a book basically saying that his boss was incompetent. So what happens if this whole thing falls apart? They lose money, they don't have funding, things like USAID are being shut down, no more nationwide injunctions. They find out that everything he did was a complete scam and fraud. Your case comes to fruition. They have hearings in Congress. Eric Smith says, "Hey, Wes, not only is this a complete fraud, but the signatures we think are forged." I mean, that's one of the allegations. So what's going to happen then? Is the country going to go?
Smiling.
Go ahead.
You see me smiling, Greg, because as the old proverb goes, "There's no honor among thieves." Okay, Ron Klain, White House chief of staff to Obama and to Biden, will throw their boss under the bus to make millions of dollars with book deals. These are the people who were in charge of this country and almost destroyed it. These people should all be put away. We should put them somewhere out, maybe in Wyoming, set up an electrified fence and let them live there. Or maybe we can send them to Alligator Alley, Alligator Alcatraz or whatever. Let them live there, frankly, because they are traitors. They are traitors. Christopher Wray's a traitor. These people are traitors. They care about power. They care about themselves. They don't care about the American people. And that's why, frankly, President Trump is, swimming upstream, and then he's got the judges on top of everything else that are trying to thwart what he's trying to do. And of course, we know that's why I started Judicial Watch back in 1994. It's why I run Freedom Watch today. We need citizens' justice peacefully and legally. We need to bring cases, criminal prosecutions. We need to have citizens grand juries. If you go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, you can sign up to be a citizens grand juror. These people need to be tried, sentenced, and put away. And we do have a right of citizens arrest in this country too, as long as it's peaceful and legal, and law enforcement can be commissioned to do it. And we hope that they'll rise up and do it. And given the fact that you have all of this violence, President had to send the National Guard to Los Angeles. Today, they're about ready to riot again in Los Angeles because the Justice Department sued them to open up their sanctuary cities. They are fomenting dissent. They're telling people this is all racism against Latinos and brown people and others. It's not. Most Latinos don't want illegals in this country. Most Latinos are good people. We're talking about the criminals. And that's what we've got to protect ourselves from.
Tell me what your prediction is. When you first came on, you said, as this goes down, as they lose their avenues, as things happen, and they're probably not going to win, they'll get violent. What's your prediction now for what you're seeing unfolding here in America?
Well, it's worse than ever, and with this decision by Coney Barrett in the Supreme Court that actually is being oversold, but they think it ended, their ability to go to court. It didn't. But you're going to see much more violence in the future. And that's why I tell people, go out there and buy a gun. Get ready. Protect your family. Don't use it offensively. Use it defensively. People come after you and you're in fear of immediate bodily injury or death, and use it to save yourself and your loved ones. But they are coming for us, and they will. And you can see this with this clown in New York City, this radical Muslim. There are a lot of good Muslim people, Greg, you know that. But this guy's radical. He's a Hamas supporter, like Ilham Omar, like Rashida Tlaib in Congress. These people are real threats to this country, and they need to be held accountable. Let's talk about
Mamdani.
Yeah, Mamdani.
Could Trump deport Mamdani, the mayoral candidate?
Well, he is a citizen, so it'll be hard to deport him, but they could find something on him, and they should be investigating him and do their best, frankly, to have him indicted. If not, we'll seek to hold him accountable. This guy's extremely dangerous. Even if, he does not trigger an intifada in New York, his words enough are putting Jews and Christians at risk. And you would not believe, people need only go to, X, Twitter, to see the degree of anti-Semitism and anti-Christendom that is being spewed forth today. All kinds of stuff. The war in Iran triggered it as well. So all of these, pro-regime Iranians and others, by the way, 99.9% of the Iranians in this country are patriots to this country. But there's, 1 or 2% of Iranian spies and plants that are here that are extremely dangerous. And, they are financed. They're probably behind at least one of the assassination attempts of President Trump. They're in our midst. In the LA office of the FBI, I hope that Patel and Bongino are keeping them straight, so to speak. Of course, being straight in LA is another story. But in any event, they have a special section just to watch the Iranian agents that are in this city. And, Freedom Watch has an office out here. We don't even have the name of Freedom Watch on the marquee because I brought cases against the supreme leader. I have cases currently pending against Iran with a default. We're killing our brave heroes with Extortion 17, the biggest loss of life in the Afghan war. Iran was paying bounties to kill American soldiers. So these people are extremely dangerous. And let me say one other thing, Greg, is that I love the president. I think he's doing a great job, but he's making a mistake if he thinks he can negotiate with the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime is satanic. It's the disciples of the devil. They want Jews and Christians eliminated. They've said that recently. They threw water in President Trump's face. He's got this negotiator, Steve Witkoff, frankly, who looks naive and weak. It's time for President Trump, along with Israel, to take that regime out. And the Republican and the Iranian people are very well educated. They can take over. It's not going to be like Iraq. And let's just clean out the rat's nest in the Middle East. The first thing that we should do now that they're on their back. When you have them down like that, you take them out for good.
ICE tracking app, this is my last question to you. When I saw this, I thought they have a tracking app for ICE to let know where they are. Doesn't that put them at risk? And it's not a First Amendment issue. You can't holler, fire in a crowded theater. You can't, put out on Twitter, here's how you kill police officers, or here's how you make a bomb to blow up your school. You can't do that. And so Kristi Noem is talking to the DOJ about not only going after the people who came up with this ICE tracking app, but also going after CNN for promoting it. What would you do as a lawyer to CNN and to the ICE tracking app? Is that a good case? Can they make hay on that and get them to stop that app, and CNN could end up getting fined, or some of the people pushing this could be put in jail?
Well, CNN, as you know, is going to claim they have First Amendment rights, particularly as a media broadcaster. They hire a law firm like Davis Wright Tremaine, anti-Trump law firm. I've been up against them more than 15 times. Very dishonest people.
That's not reporting. That is activism. Talking about pushing an app.
Exactly. So
that's not reporting.
What we need to do is, again, to commission our citizens' grand juries to seek indictments of these CNN reporters, hosts, and frankly, the head of CNN.
You think they're legally at risk for pumping this app out? Who is running the place? You think they're legally at risk? Explain.
They should be. The First Amendment right does not cover yelling fire in a theater. This is more than yelling fire in a theater. It's in effect advocating killing people, for that matter. CNN, I call it the Communist News Network, CNN. They need to be held accountable. They are the worst, only surpassed by MSNBC and a few others, but they need to be held accountable. And unfortunately, if you do it conventionally, the Justice Department has a hard time reaching them. But we, the people, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence says, when in the course of human events, I'm paraphrasing, the sovereign, the rulers, no longer represent the people, we have a right under the laws of nature and nature's God to alter or abolish the government and to form a new government by and for the people with equal rights for everyone in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Now, extending that out, we have a right to enforce the law pursuant to the laws of nature and nature's God. We are not bound by man-made law, Freudian, man-made law. We are bound by the laws of God. And we certainly can interpret that and use that to hold people accountable, within the purview of the Ten Commandments, within the purview of just general concepts of civility and decency. And, when man-made law coincides with God's law, great. But God certainly does not countenance calling upon others to harm and kill each other. And when that happens, I don't care whether you have a First Amendment right or not, which is not a right at all. These people need to be held accountable under the laws of nature and nature's God, just like our founding fathers used as a justification to declare a new nation from King George III. And they did not go under the laws of England. They said, the heck with the laws of England. We're going under the laws of nature and nature's God, which is basically just common sense.
What would you advise people to? What should people be on the lookout for? As we'll close up here, give us a little, give us some predictions. What your thoughts are? What's going to unfold in the future?
Well, from a standpoint of an individual basis, I think look behind you when you're walking down the street. Frankly, particularly if you're wearing a jacket like I wore last week, President Trump's inauguration in 2017. Some guy walked into a bank. I was trying to make a deposit and started screaming, "You're a Nazi. You're a white supremacist." A young Iranian woman came to my defense and shouted the guy down. I would have gone crazy at the time. I was just going to let him play it out because he was obviously just insane. But there are people out there that want to harm us. So be careful, okay? Don't curb what you say what you think, but be prepared to defend yourself. With regard to the left, and these NGOs, we're doing everything we can at Freedom Watch to hold them accountable legally, both civilly and criminally. And of course, we want to work with President Trump. We want to, be complimentary to Pam Bondi and her Justice Department. We want to work with Ed Martin, who has an anti-legal weaponization section. He actually got a promotion when the rhinos kept him from being U.S. attorney.
Yes.
And now he's seeking to clean out the rat's nest in government of those who have weaponized our legal system. And I've met with Ed too, and I want to work with him in that regard. He's a good man. We need to go against these bars in the District of Columbia and New York that are trying to eliminate conservative lawyers. I've been fighting the District of Columbia bar for 14 years. It's run by communist leftists and atheists, very partisan leftists, honest people.
We got a big fight on our hands.
We got a big fight on our hands. We can't let up. And remember, President Trump is only there for 3.5 years. So we have to lay the foundation for what goes on after he steps down as president. We thank him for what he's done. He's done a great job. He's not perfect. No one is. But he's the best president we've had, in addition to Ronald Reagan in my lifetime.
CNN is saying he's the most popular Republican president in history, and he's up hugely right now. Larry Klayman, freedomwatchusa.org. There will be links for them to donate to you. There's also snail mail. They can also donate. Some people don't like the electronic signature. Larry Klayman, thanks for coming on and talking about the auto pen.
Bless you, Greg.
I think the auto pen thing's a huge deal. I think they're going to get desperate. I think they're going to get violent. I think they're going to get desperate and violent. And you say?
Well, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I remember when I was a young, this is real quick, when I was a young intern, I should say, in the office of Senator Dick Schweiker during Watergate, I sat at the auto pen signing letters. It was a lot less sophisticated than it is today mechanically. 6 different letters giving its constituents the impression that the senator agreed with them. And it actually turned me off to the point that later I founded Judicial Watch and then Freedom Watch.
Wow.
This was a good man. He was a good man. But this is Washington, D.C. And the auto pen is all over the place, and it goes back 50 years, probably longer than that, which is used to deceive the American people. In this case, Biden clearly was not in control of that. His wife probably was, and others in the White House. They should be held accountable. They should be tried. They should be convicted. They should be sentenced, and they should be thrown in the slammer.
Larry Klayman, freedomwatchusa.org. Larry Klayman, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
God bless.
Thanks again, Larry Klayman at freedomwatchusa.org.